and she saw that her dog was lying dead in the elevator shaft. No, it turned out that the dog was simply thrown down. Hello, welcome to another episode of Criminal Patrol. Well, today's episode is, I'd say, a bit preventive, as the police sometimes say, meaning it's a warning. We've talked about stalking before, but it keeps happening. I would say that the scale of everything related to someone persistently harassing another person is getting bigger and bigger. It's estimated that several million people experience this every year, so there's something to talk about here. This is another such story, and I invite you to simply listen to it. Until recently, the word stalking and its concept were completely unknown. It emerged only recently, and it was only recently that it was basically added to the penal code. It's a kind of persistent harassment of another person, either physical, in the sense that this person is present and appears everywhere their victim goes. So it can be physical, but of course it can also be virtual, like sending all kinds of messages. Gifts, presents, sending emails, it can take many forms. Of course, this originated in the 1980s when many fans would simply follow their actors, travel after them, watch for them, approach them and take pictures. And that's where this kind of concept comes from. This originated, as I said, in the 1980s. Recently we have in the code, in the penal code, this is a crime that is prosecuted. You can get several years in prison for it. And these are stories that I would say stay with people who have experienced this kind of violence for their entire lives. It must be admitted that Wlodek did not have an easy life. His start in life was downright terrible. Well, he was already quite a big child. He was 7 years old when his parents, you could say, decided to get rid of him. Well, I suppose there must have been some kind of court hearing. Nevertheless, Wlodek ended up in an orphanage at the age of 7. His parents simply left him there, and after that they never showed any interest in him again. Nor did he show any interest in them. Well, it's a strange relationship to give up a 7-year-old boy to an orphanage. It's quite an unusual situation. For many, it's probably a traumatic experience that would have to result in a hard life. That life usually doesn't work out, but not in Wlodek's case. He was born here in the south. In Poland, he was an excellent student. He was a very talented child. From a young age, he liked mathematics. He was fascinated by various kinds of complicated mathematical solutions, and he passed his final exams with flying colors. He decided to break away from his small environment and start a new life somewhere in a bigger world, and he chose Warsaw. He went to university and graduated with a teaching degree specializing in mathematics. So he could, and in fact did, teach mathematics. First he got a job at a school in Bielany where he taught for a few years, and then at a school in Mokotów. Wlodek worked at a high school, so he worked with young people. It was like this. Basically, he always kept to himself. No one ever saw him really hang out with anyone, let alone be friends with someone. Of course, he was nice and polite. If someone asked him something, he would answer. But he didn't seek contact. He didn't look for people he could, for example, go to a party with. And the teaching staff, the teachers saw him as a real professional because he really had a huge amount of knowledge. All the more so because over time he wasn't just a mathematician. New challenges appeared at school, and he handled them very well. He also became an information technology specialist. He had a huge amount of knowledge, and that's why he was respected, and the fact that he didn't want to keep in touch with anyone or kept to himself. Well, there are people like that probably in every environment, and there's really nothing strange about it. Anyway, I also think that mathematicians and computer scientists are people who are kind of in their own world, solving complicated problems with one or many unknowns. And honestly, it's hard to tell what really fascinates them. I say this because I had trouble with math myself, so it's probably through the lens of my own experiences. It was the same with Wlodek, or Włodzimierz at that point, since he was already an adult. The students also appreciated the way he taught. They valued his knowledge, but to be honest, like young people do, they thought he was a bit of an oddball. Wlodek basically went through, so to speak, the entire battle path of a teacher in a Polish school. He retires a bit earlier because he is 59 years old at the time. He retires. He never started a family. Basically, no one knew anything about his personal life either because he simply didn't talk about it. He retires. Somewhere around 2005, a doctor from Warsaw, 55-year-old Anna, was looking for an information technology specialist, someone who could simply help her handle using a computer. She posts such an ad. She puts it in the newspaper, and Wlodek responds to the ad. He's retired, maybe he wanted to earn a little extra, maybe he was looking for contact with people. He responds to Anna's ad, the doctor, and simply comes to her. He teaches her how to use the computer, how to handle different kinds of programs. Anna is impressed. She's impressed by his professionalism, his knowledge, but also, it's a bit strange in Wlodek's case, but they also start talking. He talks a lot and she tells him about herself. They establish a connection, I would say, beyond just the relationship of her hiring him for work. They start seeing each other. Anna's 55 years old. She has been through a lot. Wlodek is a lonely 60-year-old man. It seems like a bit of a late love, a late infatuation, but of course it's possible. And everything indicates that Anna and Wlodek are becoming a couple and simply took a liking to each other. They go to different places, sit down, talk and drink coffee. Well, everything looks like a normal, natural relationship. However, Anna doesn't know one thing. When Wlodek comes home, he opens his diary. He has a sort of diary, let's call it that. And in this diary, he has thousands of different kinds of notes. Every meeting with Anna is accompanied by a multitude of various entries. He analyzes everything that could have concerned that meeting. So, for example, what Anna was wearing that day, what mood she was in, what gestures she made, how many times she smiled at him, how many times she looked at other people. What's more, these were notes not only about what was happening, but also a thorough analysis of what it all could mean. What a hand movement could mean, what a nod of the head could mean. Well, I would say from the point of view of looking at it, these were rather obsessive notes. Anna didn't realize at first, but she was a doctor. She probably also had contact with various kinds of patients. While studying, she learned psychology and psychiatry. She realized pretty quickly that Wlodek's infatuation wasn't so ordinary. That it wasn't just an infatuation with a woman he liked, but it was a kind of obsession. She realized that it was heading in the wrong direction, that he was simply jealous but obsessively jealous. And if it goes on like this, it will all just end badly. Anna broke off that relationship, but it didn't seem like it was the end. Well, at least that's what she thought. Because for Wlodek or Włodzimierz, it was just the beginning. Wlodek was simply everywhere Anna was. He literally knew everything about her. Earlier, he had access to her computer. He knew what she liked, what her dreams were, what kind of music interested her, what she liked to eat. He knew everything about Anna. He knew her favorite places. He was also an information technology specialist. And the moment Anna opened her computer, hundreds of emails from Wlodek would pour out of it. In those emails, he wrote about how much he loved her, how devoted he was, how much he missed her, how Anna changed security settings and passwords. He was the one who broke through them. And again the next day, hundreds of different kinds of emails poured in, all talking about his love. It was the same in situations when she went somewhere. When she approached her car, she saw that a heart was drawn on the window, or there was a small bouquet of flowers on the car's windshield wiper, or maybe a little gift. When she came back home, there were little gifts hanging on the door handle again. He was literally everywhere. In many of those situations, Anna saw that he was taking pictures. In fact, he probably took thousands of those photos, because everywhere Anna was, he would show up and take pictures. Literally her every step. There was never a situation where Anna was somewhere and Wlodek wasn't there too. A complete, total obsession with her. Of course, Anna felt hounded. She felt trapped. Probably also, like many people in this kind of situation, she didn't know what to do about it. Because where do you look for help? Basically, this man isn't hurting her. And he shows some kind of adoration. I have to say, Anna held out for a long time. Because she held out for 4 days, years. Only after 4 years of this harassment by Wlodek did she decide to go to the police and file a report. She filed that report. The police officers accepted the report. But yes, Wlodek is after all a respected teacher with no previous record. Retired, with a good reputation. They didn't treat him as someone who could simply be a threat to Annie. The case was ongoing. However, in fact, Wlodek remained free. And Anna remained in that kind of entrapment. And Wlodek was still everywhere Anna was. It's already 2009. Anna is still living in fear because the situation hasn't changed. The investigation conducted by the police didn't scare Wlodek. She lives in fear, as I said. One evening, she goes out for a walk with her dog. She looks around. Suddenly, the dog disappeared somewhere. The woman starts looking for it. She searches everywhere, but the dog is gone. When she enters the stairwell, she opens it. The elevator shaft. The shaft, because the door could be opened, there was no elevator. And she saw that her dog was lying dead in the elevator shaft. Well, it turned out that the dog was simply thrown down the shaft from some higher floor. Someone opened the elevator door and just threw the dog down. And that's how the dog died. Of course, there was no evidence that Wlodek did it. Anna herself was only convinced that he had to be the one who did it and no one else. The days go by. It's February 19th, 2009. Anna comes back home that day, and she sees that Wlodek is in the stairwell, but he's acting strange. He's just furious. He's irritated, and Wlodek runs up to her. Wlodek runs up to her on that very staircase. He starts hitting her, kicking her. He delivers many blows, furious and aggressive. Anna falls unconscious on the staircase. But then it looks like something out of a horror movie. He pulls something out of his pocket, something like a spike, maybe a sharpened rod, or maybe a sharpened screwdriver, and he starts to stab her. Blows. He starts stabbing Anna all over her body. Later, it turned out that she received exactly 20 stab wounds. The neighbor hears all of this. The neighbor opens the door. She hears some noise in the hallway. She shouts that she's calling the police. She actually runs to her apartment. She dials the number. She starts calling the police, and Wlodek is still there with that skewer in the stairwell, and he's still striking. When he stopped using that skewer, he puts his hand in his pocket and he pulls out a gun. He puts the gun to Annie's head and shoots. I'd say it was a blessing in disguise that he just made that gun himself, that it was a poorly made gun, technically speaking, that the impact force of the bullet was very weak. Also, when this bullet hits the skull, it only causes minor injuries. And it doesn't penetrate the skull. The bang from the shot probably causes that Wlodek runs away. It's a miracle that Anna survived despite so many blows, despite the fact that he shot at her. She managed to save her life. That help came quite quickly. That probably thanks to the fact that the neighbor called the police. Of course, there was no problem figuring out who did it. Everyone knew Wlodek. The doctor talked about him too. He left plenty of traces in the stairwell. The police officers went to his apartment. He wasn't there. He was hiding. They entered the apartment. They conducted a search. They found his famous diary there, the diary in which he wrote everything down. According to the police officers, Anna's offenses were also described there, what she did wrong, what she shouldn't have done, and literally thousands of photos. There were thousands of photos of Anna on his computer. Some were taken secretly, some were taken openly, but through all those places, the ones I told you about earlier, Wlodek himself started hiding. He was wanted. His photo was shown. About 4 days later, police officers were patrolling the Kabaki forest. They saw that someone was hiding there in the Kabaki forest, some man. They started chasing him. They caught him. It turned out that it was Wlodek. 4 days later, he was arrested in the Kabaki forest. Basically, Wlodek confessed to everything. He told how it happened, but he didn't seem to have any remorse, because what he did was a kind of punishment for Anna, for ruining his life, for not keeping her word. And basically, she deserved it, because she earned it. November 23, 2010, the trial began. Wlodek admitted to what he did the whole time, but he didn't admit to that he intended to kill her. He also couldn't explain it when the judge asked him. Then why, during the attack on Anna, did he take an ice pick with him? He took a pistol with him. He also had 30 bullets. He couldn't really explain it. Despite that, it was astonishing. In fact, the court of first instance It ruled that Wlodek would not be held responsible for attempted murder, and only for serious bodily harm. He also got... It seemed under these circumstances like a symbolic sentence, because it was only 6 years of imprisonment. Everyone was surprised, and Anna, the defense, and those following the case were also surprised. 6 years for that, which clearly indicated murder or attempted murder. Of course, an appeal was filed, and the trial began in the appellate court. In fact, the appellate court sort of corrected, or so it seems, the mistake of the first instance court. It ruled that it was indeed an attempted murder. He sentenced him to 15 years. Later, the sentence was reduced to 15. Well, I would say the sentence was rather small in this situation. Anna herself said that the sentence, it's not a high sentence, not for what she suffered, for everything that happened, after all, for years. It ended just like that. She almost lost her life, but as she said, it's good that all of this finally ended, and now she'll finally have some peace. That's how this story ended. But in such a summary, such data exists for the year 2023. This year, this many were convicted for stalking, 1,568 people. However, only 2 were convicted because the person they were harassing took their own life. It's probably also hard to prove. However, I mentioned at the beginning that the scale of this harassment, this kind of obsessive harassment, is getting bigger and bigger. In Poland, every year, about 3 to 4 million people experience this. As you can see, that's a lot. Most often, it affects people between the ages of 17 and 24, but we all know that very often it also affects children in schools. And situations, I would say, in those kinds of groups, school children, early school children, or high school students, well, those situations are very hard. In the past, what happened at school stayed there, but now that's not true anymore. What happens at school carries over to the internet, and it happens all the time. So for a child, it's obviously a huge burden. It used to be like that too, that in order to get to know a person, as they used to say, you had to eat a barrel of salt with them. Today we know a person before we really do. We've gotten to know him personally or face to face like this, because this man has basically told us everything about himself already. Internet portals, various kinds of information show us this man's life, his family, his behavior, his preferences. All that concerns him, so before we know him, stalkers, well, that's significant, and that's it for today, for this episode. Of course, subscribe to our channel, and of course, take care.